Where do I even begin with this? The Iowa caucuses, if you can even call it that. They are beyond a mess. There was likely extreme incompetence that happened during this caucus from the people who run it. But also, I honestly think you're one of the most naive people on earth if you don't also think that there's some foul play happening. In fact, I'm going to go as far as to say that even if Bernie Sanders wins, I think there was still foul play. So I want to walk you through everything that happened. And as I talk to you guys right this second, we don't have the official declaration of a winner, but even according to establishment outlets now, Bernie Sanders is the favorite. So here's something I tweeted the other day that sums it up in a very succinct way, and we briefly spoke about this on Kyle and Corin at the time. In that last poll that came out, which correctly predicted all the Iowa caucus winners for like ever, Pete got that poll pulled. Pete had it spiked because, there was allegedly a problem where they didn't pronounce his name right or something to that effect. So Pete got that poll pulled. Pete's campaign, come to find out, helped to fund the app that they were using for the Iowa caucuses. Helped to fund the app. Also, former Clinton people were involved with the app. I mean, that is so immensely sketchy on its face. The name of the company, there's two companies, there's one and then the parent, it's Shadow and Acronym, which those names alone sound like something out of a movie where they play the evil company. They're the evil characters. Then, on caucus night, the app crashes. Also, whatever backup there was crashed. Pete goes out there and declares early victory. Now, at the same time that that's happening, Bernie's internal numbers show him with a, quote, comfortable victory. In fact, he was up about 5 points with about 60% reporting. Bernie's team was. That's what their internal numbers showed. And what they did is, they're smart. They decided, we don't know about this whole process because we know what the last election was like. So they went out of their way to set up their own election infrastructure to make sure that we know the real results. And in the internal numbers, again, he was up about 5 points, quote, up comfortably with 60% reporting. And then the Iowa Democratic Party doesn't release the numbers, talks about how, the app crashed and there was a massive screw up and we're just making sure that the numbers are right. They said we're doing, quote, quality control. And the Iowa Dems release a slow drip of data, and every time they release the data, it shows Pete up. Every time it's also showed Bernie Sanders leading in the popular vote, but it showed Pete up. So at first they released 62% of the results, and it showed, first they said, oh, we're only going to release 50%. Then they come out and they release 62% of the results. Bernie's leading in the popular votes, but Pete is leading in the state delegates, state delegate equivalents as they're called. Then they go out there and release 71%, and it's basically same scenario. The lead is cut ever so slightly, or I'm sorry, the lead 0.1% swings more in Pete's direction with the state delegate equivalents, but Bernie is still leading in the popular vote. Then they release 75% hours later, and everybody was like, what on God's green earth is going on? You went from 71% to 75%, and it was hours in between? What's happening? What's going on? Why is this taking so long? And we learned that, yet again, Bernie Sanders is leading in the popular vote, but they say Pete is leading in the state delegate equivalents. Then we get 92%. I think right now we're at 97%. And what happened? Here, I'm going to go ahead and pause for a second and let you guess what happened. Would you look at that? almost all of the heavy pro-Bernie areas they release late. Isn't that convenient? So Pete goes out there and he does a 3-day victory lap, starting the night of the Iowa caucus, and then the subsequent nights, every day going around acting like he's winning, basically saying I was victorious. And then what happens as a result of that? And the media nonstop puffing him up. The polls come out in New Hampshire, Pete surges, up 8 points. If you're not skeptical of what's happening here, you're not paying attention. So, I haven't even gotten to the craziest part yet. And remember, everything I've said so far is proven. We know it's true. Everything I've said so far. There's no part of this that's like, me overreaching or giving my opinion. It's a matter of fact that Pete's campaign gave over $40,000 to help fund this app that they're using to report the results. Former Clinton people were involved with the creation of the app. So many problems with the app. It wasn't even minimally secured. You needed 2 different passwords and nobody even knew the freaking passwords. It wasn't stress tested and it crashed immediately. All this stuff. Look at this. The IDP, Iowa Democratic Party, is now reporting vote totals from Black Hawk County that are at odds with what Black Hawk County themselves have reported. So when you go into the specifics of that, you find in no uncertain terms, Bernie support and Warren support is going to Tom Steyer and Deval Patrick. The only reason we even know about this is because the supervisor from Black Hawk County was getting antsy because they weren't releasing his results. And he's like, I don't know what the holdup is. I gave it to them a day ago. And so he posted about it and gave all the specifics in a very concise way. And he said, here are the results of our county. And when they released the official results, you had Bernie support and Warren support, but I think way more was taken from Bernie's support because he had more support, going to Tom Steyer and Deval Patrick. Deval Patrick somehow ended up with over 1% of the state delegate equivalents. He didn't do Dickie McGee's acts. There was nobody out there for Deval Patrick. What are you talking about? So, again, the only reason we know about this is because that supervisor was getting antsy and he posted on Facebook and said, hey, here are our results. If you need help, here it is. And so they were put in a position, the Iowa State Democratic Party, they tweet, oh, no, yeah, we're going to, a minor issue that we're fixing. So did they give an explanation as to how they messed up and had Bernie support go to Tom Steyer and Deval Patrick? No. No explanation, no nothing. They were like, oh, yeah, no, that was a mistake, and we're fixing it, and everybody shut up, we're done. Super sketchy. Super sketchy. And then now we're supposed to believe that this race is dead tied with Bernie Sanders and Mayor Pete. I'll come out and say it. I know that there are people out there who won't say it, but I'll say it. Even if Bernie ends up winning, which is now likely because there's still some satellites that remain to be counted, and Bernie organized those satellites fantastically well. He's winning them like 75%, some of them 90%. But even if Bernie ends up winning, I still think that the results were messed with. I do. And there's been so much stuff out there that feeds that thought in my mind. For instance, when the caucus was going on, everything coming out was showing that turnout was tremendous. Tremendous. People were tweeting about, I've been waiting online for 5 hours. I was like, I didn't even know lines for a caucus are a thing. I had no idea that was a thing. So some people were saying that. They were taking pictures. They were, when you saw everything in the moment, and I'm not just talking about from pro-Bernie feeds. I'm talking about go anywhere on Twitter. Warren Twitter, frickin' to the extent there's any support for any of the other candidates other than Bernie and Warren on Twitter, go check. And in the moment, everything was crystal clear, huge turnout, specifically among young people. And then the first article I see on turnout is hours later, and they say record low turnout. Record low See, now you're putting me in a position where I know somebody's bullshitting me. And it's either you or my lying eyes. Now, you could say, well, you know, what do you really know about the size of the caucuses? And it might seem big, but it's not big, and maybe you're reading too much into it, and you're only seeing pro-Bernie accounts and this and this and that. Listen, son. Listen. They maybe could have snuck by me average turnout if they wrote an article saying, hey, it's about average turnout. I'd be like, okay, it looked kind of big to me, but maybe I'm wrong and it's average. You're not going to sneak by me low turnout. That's not happening. That's not happening. All the evidence I saw on social media was the exact opposite. And then come to find out later on, we learned that at least they're admitting specifically among young people. Specifically among young people. Massive turnout. And when young people turn out, who wins? Say it with me. Bernard Sanders. So here, I'll tell you guys exactly what I think. I think that Bernie's internal numbers are dead accurate. When you say as a campaign, I have a comfortable lead, you know what that means? Let me decode that for you from political speak. Even if any of the other candidates surge, even if the candidate closest to me surges, he can't win. That's what that means. Oh, I have a comfortable lead. Even if everything goes perfectly for him from here on out, I still win by at least 3 points. 2 points at the absolute worst. But they're telling us that, no, dead tide between Bernie and Pete. And, you know, it really looks like they fudge with the outcome and Bernie still is going to win. That's really what it looks like, which is wild. But listen, I said it before, I'll say it again. Bernie Sanders' campaign never lied to me. The Democratic Party lies to me all the time. So if you ask me to pick between the Bernie internals and the Iowa Democratic Party, who used an app tied to Clinton people, and Mayor Pete's team funded over 40 grand of the app, none of this is conspiracy. This is all on the record. This was all reported as we learned more on the night of the caucus. You're asking me to trust the same group of corrupt elitists, the establishment of the party that's rotten to its core, which screwed us in 2016. That's the other point. If you say, oh, conspiracy. We learned in 2016, because of WikiLeaks, thank God for WikiLeaks, that the Hillary campaign, an arm of the Hillary campaign, was the DNC. They got the last word on fucking press releases. So we knew they were messed with it last time, and now this time you're asking me, who do you believe? Do you believe your lying eyes? Or do you believe the Iowa Democratic Party? Do you believe Bernie's internal numbers? People who they trained to do this stuff accurately? Or do you believe this corrupt party? By the way, further evidence and reason to believe in Bernie's internals versus the Democratic Party of Iowa? Apparently the DNC helped take over at a certain point in counting. No, you're the exact people we don't trust. You're the exact people we don't trust. Also, there's been no transparency. It's a total black box. So there's no timeline. They're not saying about when they'll get the results in. There again, detailed evidence of them having results for a while and a slow drip of releasing them, no explanation as to how they're doing it in the order that they're doing it. And if people fire back and say, well, it just goes by the population size of the thing. No, it doesn't. And it's not like, oh, the more populated areas are the ones that are coming in last. No, there is no logic to it. And again, there's evidence of them having results from certain counties and it not coming back for such a long time. So no transparency, zero transparency. They said, oh, we're doing it for quality control to make sure all the numbers are right. And then they did that gigantic screw up that they had to correct because social media caught it, of them giving Bernie support to Steyer and Deval Patrick. Weird. Why is it all the mistakes cut in one direction, going against Bernie Sanders? there needs to be an explanation for that discrepancy. The discrepancy between Bernie's internal numbers, and to be clear, we don't have his 90% numbers or his 100% numbers. To my knowledge, all they released is his 60% numbers. But in Bernie's internal numbers, he is comfortably leading. You're going to have to explain the discrepancy. You know, this is an election. It's not supposed to be, well, about that. No. When you go to the bank, do they say, hey, here's about the $450 you wanted? They say, here's $450. We're going to give it exact. This is money. This is serious. But in election, we're going to do some about shit. His internals could have a 5-point difference between the final results. Even if Bernie ends up winning, he's going to, edge it out. There's no logical explanation for that. They're going to have to try, hey, here's the discrepancy. Here are the precincts. Here are the counties. Here's how it happened. Super sketchy process. The Iowa caucus is almost certainly going to be gone from its first-in-the-nation spot, at least in the Democratic side. And it's wholly earned, man. Listen, I'll say it in a very plain way here. What should we do? First of all, there should be national standards. That's obvious. To have each state do it and then all of them have different rules is ridiculous. But it should be primaries, not caucuses. Okay, that's point number one. Point number two is open primaries, not closed primaries. That's point number two. And by the way, the reason for that is it's more democratic. It's more democratic. So, and people say, oh, well, you can have the occasional situation of somebody voting for somebody who they don't want and who they don't like, but they're only doing it to prop up somebody in the other party. That's super rare, but even if that does happen, so what? So what? You're still going to get, there's going to be more of an upside than there is a downside because you're going to have more people who might be crossover voters in a given election. An independent who wants to vote for Bernie, or a Republican who wants to vote for Bernie, or a Democrat who wants to vote for Trump. You'll have more people voting their conscience than if you do it a different way. So you should have that. You should also have ranked choice voting, and you should also have proportional delegates in every state. Some states, of course, are still winner take all. So that's how they should do it. I think that's the best way. That's the most fair way. That's the most objective way to get to one person, one vote. What we saw in Iowa, even if Bernie ends up winning, it was sketchy beyond all imagination. And even if he ends up winning, I think his internals are way more accurate. It's not like when Bernie's team trained the people to get the results, they said, oh, and now, by the way, make sure you skew it in favor of our guy. They don't do that. They're trained to be objective about it. So you have those people versus an Iowa Democratic Party and a DNC, which has given us every reason to doubt them. And would you look at that? The result is Mayor Pete does a 3-day victory lap and gets a giant spike in New Hampshire. But listen, I want to be on the record about this. I said it 1,000 times, and you guys remember. In order for Bernie to win, he needs to overwin. That looks like literally what happened in Iowa. That literally looks like what happened in Iowa. Sorry, Bernie, to win, you got to overwin. It looks like he won by 4 or 5 points, and now he's going to barely eke out the tiniest of victories. That is exactly what I warned you about. So moving forward, I'm not playing, son. You better get your ass off the couch. You better make some phone calls. You better text. You better canvass for him. Do something. Make yourself useful. Because we need to win this race. It's not a question. We need to win this race. Absolutely. So we have to overwin in order to win. So up and at 'em. Get to it. If you're in New Hampshire, get ready because we're coming. Get ready. You better get ready the day you wake up on that day to get out and go vote. Take a day off from work if you have to. Whatever it is, you got to do it. Nevada caucus. Get ready. Get ready. If we win New Hampshire and Nevada, then we probably win South Carolina. Then it's over. If you go 4 for 4, the first 4 contests, what race is there? Ain't no race anymore. Ain't no race. Who's going to surge? Klobuchar? Mayor Pete? Biden, who's hanging on for dear life and trying to beg his donors today? I'm still viable. I'm still viable. Oh, man. We have to overwin in order to win. And my words were proven correct in literally the first contest.